She cleaned offices at the Pentagon for 15 years. Invisible, ignored, just another janitor emptying trash cans. But when terrorists attacked the building, her actions revealed a past that would shock everyone who had overlooked her. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden courage and forgotten legends, tell me in the comments where are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are never forgotten. The Pentagon's third-floor corridors hummed with the constant energy of national security business. Briefing, meeting, classified documents moving through hands that shaped America's defense strategy. Through it all, one figure moved almost invisibly among the decision-makers and power brokers who rarely looked her way. Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart with the same quiet efficiency she had maintained for 15 years. Gray uniform, hair pulled back, eyes that saw everything but revealed nothing. To most, she was simply part of the building's infrastructure, as unremarkable as the fluorescent lights or the security cameras that recorded her nightly rounds. She arrived each evening at 6 p.m. sharp, badged in through the service entrance, and began her methodical cleaning routine. Third floor first, then second, finishing with the first floor executive offices by 2 a.m. The same pattern, night after night, year after year. Her English was accented but clear when spoken to, which wasn't often. Most personnel didn't bother with pleasantries. Colonel James Mitchell was different. The 45-year-old Marine officer had been assigned to the Pentagon for 3 years, and he always nodded when Maria emptied his office trash. Sometimes he even said good evening. It was more courtesy than most showed. "Long night ahead, Maria?" he'd ask occasionally, glancing up from his paperwork. "Always, Colonel," she'd reply with a slight smile, continuing her work without interrupting his focus. What Colonel Mitchell didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maria's eyes absorbed more than dust and discarded documents. She noticed pattern, inconsistencies, the subtle signs that came from decades of training most people couldn't imagine. The way certain visitors carried themselves, the stress levels that fluctuated around specific classified briefings, the telltale signs of surveillance equipment that didn't belong. Maria saw it all, cataloged it all, and said nothing. Her personnel file listed her as Maria Santos, 52, originally from El Salvador, U.S. citizen since 1995. Clean background check, reliable employee, no security clearance required for her position. The file was accurate, but incomplete. Some truths were buried too deep for standard background checks to uncover. On September 15th, Maria noticed something that made her pause while emptying a wastebasket in the Joint Chiefs conference room. A visitor's badge from earlier that day. Discarded, but still readable. The name meant nothing to most people, but Maria recognized it from intelligence reports she'd memorized 20 years ago. A name connected to known terrorist financiers. She photographed the badge with a cleaning cloth wrapped around her phone, a motion so natural it looked like she was simply wiping the device clean. That night, she made a call from a secure phone that officially didn't exist. "Nest, this is Songbird," she said in flawless, unaccented English. "We have a potential problem." The response came immediately. "Songbird, you've been dark for 15 years. What's the situation?" "Probable hostile reconnaissance. Badge belonged to Ahmad Nazir, alias David Richardson. He had access to level 3 briefing rooms today." A pause. "Are you certain?" "Positive ID. Request immediate threat assessment." "Copy, Songbird. Stand by for instructions." Maria had hoped this call would never be necessary. She'd hoped her old life could stay buried, that she could finish her cover assignment and fade into a genuine civilian existence. But some duties never end. The memories came flooding back as she ended the call. Sarajevo, 1997. The abandoned warehouse where she'd maintained cover as a refugee aid worker while tracking arms dealers. The explosion that was supposed to kill Elena Ramirez, staged so perfectly that even her own handlers believed it for weeks. She remembered the pain of letting everyone think she was dead, including her sister Carmen back in California, who still lit candles for her every Christmas. But the hardest part had been learning to become Maria Santos. Not just the accent and the backstory, but genuinely becoming invisible, training herself to walk differently, to look down instead of scanning for threats, to clean around classified documents without reading them. It had taken 3 years before she stopped instinctively checking her 6 every time she entered a room. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent decades as Elena Ramirez being the most dangerous person in any room while looking harmless. Now, as Maria Santos, she'd perfected being truly harmless while remaining lethal. The Pentagon's janitorial staff had unknowingly worked alongside someone who could kill silently in 7 different ways, and had once single-handedly extracted a CIA asset from a Moscow hotel while posing as a chambermaid. 3 days later, on September 18th, Maria arrived for her evening shift to find find unusual activity in the building, extra security personnel, heightened alert status, and a tension in the air that spoke of credible threats. She began her cleaning routine, but her senses were fully activated now, every instinct sharpened by years of fieldwork most people would never know about. As she moved through the corridors, she noticed details others missed. The way one security guard's equipment was positioned incorrectly for a right-handed shooter, the subtle bulge in a visitor's jacket that indicated body armor, not appropriate for a civilian contractor, the pattern of foot traffic that suggested someone had been mapping guard rotation. Her phone buzzed with a text that looked like a routine scheduling update, but contained a coded message. Multiple hostiles confirmed. Breach imminent. Maintain cover unless directly threatened. Maria understood. After 15 years of invisibility, her handlers still saw her as an asset to be protected rather than an operator ready to engage. They didn't realize that Elena Ramirez hadn't been sleeping. She'd been watching, learning, preparing for exactly this moment. At 10:47 p.m., the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the corridors in an eerie red glow. Maria immediately dropped to one knee beside her cart, her hand finding the hidden compartment she'd installed years ago. Her fingers closed around cold metal she'd hoped never to touch again. The building's security systems began broadcasting evacuation procedures, but Maria knew this wasn't a drill. The systematic way the power had been cut, the timing, the prior reconnaissance, this was the attack she'd warned about. Explosions echoed from the basement level, then gunfire. Maria's training kicked in completely now. She pulled her radio and switched to a frequency that didn't officially exist. Control, this is Songbird. Package is active. Request permission to engage. Static then. Songbird, maintain cover. Friendlies are responding. Negative Control. Friendlies are walking into a trap. I count at least 6 hostiles, possibly more. They have building schematics and security protocols. This is a surgical strike, not random terrorism. Another pause. What's your assessment, Songbird? Maria was already moving, leaving her cart behind and heading for the stairwell. Primary target is the server room. Secondary objectives likely include document theft and personnel extraction. They're not here to make a statement. They're here to steal everything. Rules of engagement. Whatever it takes, Maria replied, checking the weapon she'd kept hidden for 15 years, maintained and cleaned religiously, despite hoping never to use it. I'm going dark. While Pentagon security forces responded to the obvious breach points, Maria moved toward the sounds of combat with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd done this before. The civilian personnel were evacuating through designated routes, but Maria knew the building's hidden passages, the ones not on any public blueprint. She'd spent 15 years learning every inch of this building, every ventilation shaft, every maintenance tunnel, every emergency access point. What others saw as a workplace, she'd mapped as a potential battlefield. The first body she found was Sergeant Williams from the night security detail. Good man, family in Virginia, always polite to the cleaning staff. The sight of him face down in his own blood triggered something primal in Maria. These weren't just threats to national security anymore. They'd killed someone she knew. She reached the basement level through a maintenance shaft, just as 3 armed figures in tactical gear emerged from the utility tunnels. They moved with military precision, heading directly for the building's central computer core. This wasn't random terrorism. This was a surgical strike for intelligence. But Maria had positioned herself perfectly. Years of invisibility had taught her patience, how to wait for exactly the right moment. She watched them advance, memorizing their equipment, their formation, their weaknesses. The lead attacker never saw Maria emerge from the shadows. Her attack was silent, precise, and lethal. 2 quick strikes, and he was down, his weapon now in her hands. The second terrorist turned at the sound of his partner's fall, but Maria's shots were faster and more accurate. The third attacker managed to get off several rounds before Maria's training took over completely. She moved like water, flowing around his attacks, closing distance until she was inside his guard. The combat knife that appeared in her hand seemed to materialize from nowhere. When it was over, Maria stood in the red emergency lighting, breathing hard but alive. 3 highly trained operatives lay dead around her. Their mission failed. She'd protected the building she'd called home for 15 years. The colleagues who'd never known they had a guardian angel emptying their trash cans. Her phone buzzed. A message from Control. Songbird. Status report. 3 hostiles neutralized. Breach contained. I'm hit, but mobile. Extraction available. Maria looked around at the bodies, at the blood, at the life she'd built falling apart around her. Negative. I'm staying. This is still my job. When Pentagon security forces finally reached the basement level, they found 3 dead terrorists and Maria Santos sitting calmly against a wall, applying pressure to a bullet wound in her shoulder. Her gray cleaning uniform was torn torn and bloody, but her eyes were alert and focused. "Ma'am, are you injured?" the first security officer asked, not recognizing the woman who'd cleaned his office for years. "Flesh wound," Maria replied, her accent notably absent now. 3 hostiles neutralized. Primary objective was the server room. They had inside intelligence on building layout and security protocols. The security team leader, Sergeant Davis, stared at her in confusion. "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. How do you know what their objective was?" Maria looked at him with patient exhaustion. "Because I've been watching them plan this for 3 days. And because 20 years ago, I would have been the one planning it." Before Sergeant Davis could process this statement, Colonel Mitchell appeared with a team of senior officers. He stopped short when he saw Maria, taking in the scene with growing amazement. "Maria? What the hell happened here?" She met his eyes directly. "I did my job, Colonel." Both of them. As the immediate area was secured, more personnel arrived. Maria watched familiar faces appear, people she'd cleaned up after for years, now seeing her in an entirely different context. Captain Rodriguez from the Intelligence Division, whose coffee cups she'd emptied countless times. Major Thompson, who'd always left his desk organized for her. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, who'd once thanked her for staying late to clean before a VIP visit. They all stared at her with the same expression, complete bewilderment mixed with growing realization that the quiet cleaning lady was not what she'd seemed. "Sir," Sergeant Davis said to Colonel Mitchell, "she's requesting immediate contact with CIA Director Chen. Claims to have priority clearance codes." "She what?" Mitchell looked at Maria, who was still sitting against the wall, still bleeding, still impossibly calm. "Call Director Chen," Maria said simply. "Tell her Songbird needs extraction. She'll understand." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, that's not how clearance works. You can't just—" "Clearance level 7, compartmentalized access, Special Activities Division," Maria interrupted. "Authorization code Nightingale 77 Delta. Active since 1993, suspended since 2008. Reactivated tonight under emergency protocols." The officers exchanged uncertain glances. These weren't the words of a confused civilian. This was someone speaking their language with absolute authority. Colonel Mitchell made the call. Within hours, the Pentagon was crawling with investigators from multiple agencies. Maria found herself in a secure conference room, facing a panel of officials she recognized, but who were seeing her clearly for the first time. Director Sarah Chen of the CIA leaned forward. "Agent Ramirez, it's been a long time." Maria nodded. 15 years, 3 months, 12 days. "Your cover was deep," Agent Frank Morrison from the FBI added. "Even we didn't know you were still operational." "I wasn't supposed to be," Maria replied. "This was meant to be my final assignment. Establish civilian identity, monitor for potential threats, report anything significant. I was supposed to retire next year." Colonel Mitchell sat in stunned silence as the pieces fell into place. The quiet cleaning lady who'd worked in his building for years was actually a deep cover intelligence operative with a service record that was still mostly classified. Director Chen opened a thick file. "Major Elena Ramirez, U.S. Army Special Forces, then CIA Special Activities Division. 17 years of covert operations across 4 continents. Expert in linguistic infiltration, counterintelligence, and close quarters combat. Presumed dead in Bosnia, 2008. That was the point," Maria said quietly. "Elena Ramirez died so Maria Santos could live." "The Sarajevo operation," Agent Morrison said, reading from his own file. "You maintained cover for 14 months, identified the entire smuggling network, and extracted 7 American hostages. Your presumed death was necessary to protect ongoing operations and ensure the safety of assets still in the field." Maria's mind drifted back to that night in Sarajevo. The warehouse explosion that was supposed to kill her. The weeks of hiding in safe houses while her handlers decided her fate. The hardest part hadn't been the physical pain from the staged injury, but watching the news coverage of her own funeral, seeing her sister Carmen crying at the cemetery, holding their mother who never recovered from losing her eldest daughter. "The transition to civilian life was supposed to be temporary," Director Chen continued. "A way to debrief safely while providing low-level intelligence support. But you adapted so well to the cover identity that we decided to make it permanent." Maria nodded. 15 years of learning to be normal, 15 years of watching from the shadow, filing reports on potential threats, being invisible. I thought I'd succeeded. "You had," Agent Morrison replied. "Until tonight. The question now is what happens next. Your cover is blown, but your value as an operative is finished," Maria said firmly. "I'm 52 years old. I've been away from active duty for 15 years. I did what needed to be done tonight, but that was instinct and necessity, not a return to service." Colonel Mitchell finally found his voice. 15 years? You've been watching over us for 15 years? "Among other things," Maria replied. "I filed reports on potential security breaches, unusual visitor patterns, suspicious suspicious behavior. Most threats were handled quietly before they ever developed into actual danger. She paused, remembering the small victories that had never made headlines. The Russian diplomat whose listening device she'd spotted during a cleaning shift. The contractor who'd been photographing sensitive areas. The suspicious packages that were always accidentally discovered during her rounds. The Ahmad Nazir identification, Director Chen noted. Your alert allowed us to track his associates and uncover a larger cell. Tonight's attack was their backup plan when they realized we were onto them. How many other times? Colonel Mitchell asked. How many threats did you identify that we never knew about? 17 major incidents, Maria replied without hesitation. 43 minor security breaches, 2 potential assassination attempts, 1 biological weapon threat that never developed, all handled through back channels, never traced back to the janitorial staff. The room fell silent as the officials processed this information. For 15 years, they'd had a guardian angel emptying their trash cans and mopping their floors. Director Chen studied her carefully. The question now is what happens next? Your cover is blown, but your expertise is exactly what it's always been, Maria interrupted. I know this building better than anyone. I know the people, the patterns, the vulnerabilities. I can continue to serve, just not invisibly. Agent Morrison leaned back in his chair. The Pentagon will need extensive security reviews after tonight's breach. Someone with your background and intimate knowledge of the facility would be invaluable. As a consultant, Maria said firmly, not as an operative. I've given 32 years to this country in one capacity or another. I want to finish what I started here, learning to be a civilian. Colonel Mitchell spoke up. What about your job? Your position here? Maria smiled slightly. I assume I'll need new credentials now that my cover identity is compromised, but I still know how to clean offices, and this building still needs maintenance staff, just perhaps with a different background check. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. A legendary operative wanted to return to cleaning floors in the same building where she just prevented a major terrorist attack. There would be conditions, Director Chen said carefully. Periodic debriefings, consultation on security matters, updated clearance levels. I can live with that, Maria replied, as long as I can also live with regular hours, weekends off, and the right to be visible again. Over the next several hours, the scope of the terrorist plot became clear. The cell had been planning the attack for 18 months, using Maria's initial intelligence report about Ahmad Nazir to identify and disrupt their network had forced them to accelerate their timeline and use backup operatives. The damage could have been catastrophic. The server room contained classified information about ongoing operations worldwide, personnel files, strategic plans, intelligence assessments, everything needed to compromise American operations across multiple theaters. You saved more than the building, Agent Morrison told her during a break in the debriefing. You saved operations that protect hundreds of assets around the world. Maria shrugged. I protected my co-workers. I protected my home. Everything else was just doing the job. But the weight of what might have happened if she hadn't been there pressed down on her. How many operations would have been compromised? How many agents would have been killed? How many terrorist attacks would have succeeded because their intelligence was stolen? 3 weeks later, Maria returned to work at the Pentagon. Her new ID badge listed her as Elena Santos, reflecting her real first name while maintaining the identity she'd built over 15 years. Her security clearance was now higher than most of the officials whose offices she cleaned. The transformation wasn't complete overnight. Personnel who'd ignored her for years now treated her with a mixture of respect and curiosity that made her uncomfortable. Some asked questions about her past that she couldn't answer. Others simply stared when they thought she wasn't looking. But slowly, a new normal emerged. She was still part of the janitorial staff, but now she also attended security briefings. She still emptied trash cans, but she also consulted on threat assessments. She still mopped floors, but now she did it knowing that everyone around her finally understood who was really watching over them. Colonel Mitchell made a point of stopping by her supply closet on her first day back. How's the shoulder? He asked. Healing, she replied, organizing cleaning supplies with practiced efficiency. Doctor says I'll have full range of motion in a few months. And how are you adjusting to everything? Maria paused, considering the question. I spent years trying to become Maria Santos, the invisible cleaning lady. Turns out I succeeded better than I thought. Now I have to figure out how to be Elena Santos, the visible former operative who cleans offices. Any regrets? Colonel Mitchell asked. She looked at him directly. About the cover assignment? Number. About staying when I could have disappeared after that first 5-year stint? Sometime. About what happened 3 weeks ago? Never. The Pentagon owes you a debt it can never repay, the colonel said formally. The Pentagon owes me a steady paycheck and good health insurance, Maria replied with a slight smile. Everything else was just doing my job. As Colonel Mitchell walked away, Maria returned to her supplies. Tomorrow, she would clean the offices where national security decisions were made, just as she had for 15 years. The only difference difference was that now people knew who was really watching over them. She preferred it the old way, when she was invisible. But some secrets were worth revealing when lives were at stake. Some covers were worth breaking when duty called. And sometimes the most dangerous people were the ones nobody bothered to notice until it was too late. Maria Santos had been a perfect cover identity. Elena Santos would be something new, a guardian who was no longer hidden, a protector who could finally be acknowledged, a veteran who had earned the right to choose her own mission. The Pentagon was safer because of her vigilance, and she was finally free to decide what kind of person she wanted to be in the light. Have you ever known someone who served in silence, who protected others without recognition? Share their story in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the most powerful guardians are often the ones we never see coming.